Yolo County by SMUD for the electric service, and so we're going to. It's hard to explain because it depends upon where you are. If you're in Sacramento County, you've got measure L. If you're in Yolo County, you've got measure H and I, and so we'll get into all of that with people that can explain why they want you to go for it. Is Bill Slaton, who is a board member of the Sacramento Municipal Utility District and chairman of the campaign committee. The no vote is Ken Payne is here, president of the Sacramento County Taxpayers League. And gentlemen, both of you, thank you very much. So many times when we do the propositions, the whole game here is to first and foremost just tell people what in the heck this is, and it becomes more confusing with this measure because of the fact that it does have different letters depending upon whether you're in Yolo or Sacramento, correct?
It does, Tom. In the Yolo County area, which
let me identify you, Bill Slaton, who wants you to vote yes.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
I'll let you get started here and explain what you can about what this will do if it passes.
Great, thanks a lot, Tom. So about 3.5 years ago, the Yolo elected officials representing their constituents in the cities of Woodland, West Sacramento, and Davis in the unincorporated area of Yolo County, of eastern Yolo, approached SMUD and said by unanimous vote that they wanted SMUD to consider annexing or having the Yolo communities become part of the SMUD service area.
Yeah.
And
how long ago?
That was 3.5 years ago.
3.5 years, okay.
Yeah. So we said, fine, thank you very much, but, we better think carefully about this because, after all, this could be a significant change, so we should study it. And so we did that. And we spent several years now in study after study analyzing it very carefully. Okay. And the result ultimately is it's on the ballot. For the Yolo customers, it's measures H and I, and for the Sacramento customers here, for the existing SMUD customers, it's measure L.
Forgive me for interrupting, but do they say the same thing or close to the same thing, or are they dramatically different?
Well, they're a little different in that the Yolo measures have to follow a certain section of the code of the Local Agency Formation Commission. LAFCO. So those ballot measures were put on, and they're fairly simple. One says, shall SMUD provide electric service, and the other one says, shall SMUD annex the territory. And it has to do with energy law and with kind of the regulations.
Is that one where both of them have to win?
That is correct. Both of them have to win.
Right.
Now, the measure in Sacramento is more detailed in that it says, shall we provide service to the Yolo communities? And attached to it is a very specific ordinance that goes into very great detail under what conditions must we follow if we provide service to those Yolo customers. For example, the Yolo customers must pay all the cost. We must have a public accounting of all the costs. The SMUD board may not change the ordinance until all of the costs have been recovered. And it goes through various other details as well.
All right. Ken Payne, president of the Sacramento County Taxpayers League, you want people to vote no on one, some, all? I don't know how else to explain it because there's a variety here. You're against the idea, right. but is a no vote what you're calling for on the H, the I over there, the L over here?
Well, we're mainly concerned about the L over here. The H and I are covered by the Yolo County Taxpayers League over there.
Well, but all right. You got to have an opinion on it, Ken. I mean, We're not here to play boundary games.
That's right. So we're against all three of the measures.
Okay. All right. Why?
We actually see SMUD as a very good service. First of all, the campaign is not against SMUD at all. We're happy with low rates. We're happy with good service. So it's not about that. It's about letting the ratepayers make the decision on the annexation. Originally, one of our concerns was that there wasn't a mechanism for recuperating the loss of revenue to the jurisdictions in Yolo County, aside from a special election or a special tax that would be required by Prop 218.
How would they lose money?
Well, that's a good question. PG&E currently pays property tax and franchise fees to the jurisdictions.
They're a tax-paying corporation.
Right.
SMUD is a non-profit.
Not-for-profit.
A municipality, so you don't have the same tax.
That's correct.
Impact. Okay.
That's correct.
All right. So Yolo County would lose PG&E tax.
Right, and the estimates have been between $2.1 million and $2.4 million a year in revenue from property tax and franchise fees. So that issue wasn't worked out, first of all, but then the Taxpayers League really became interested in the eminent domain issue, and we really feel like it was abuse of eminent domain. Next, we felt that it was fundamentally wrong for one public utility to take over another public utility just to provide the same amount of service. Then the other thing that occurred to us rather recently was the fact that the YOLO side, the YOLO customers will actually they'll be paying for this infrastructure twice. They've already paid for it for the PG&E portion with PG&E, but now they're going to have to purchase it.
You mean like all the wires and
the wires?
I mean,
poles,
all the things that a utility does. Yeah, right. So that was all PG&E property, and so you're saying they paid for it once, they're going to pay for it twice.
Right.
Okay. Bill Slaton from SMUD.
Well, let's start with the tax issue regarding the YOLO communities.
Okay.
What happened is the elected officials in SMUD sat down and said, part of the LAFCO restrictions on SMUD were that we make them whole, that in fact the jurisdictions over there not lose money. So we talked to them about our rate structure. We talked to them about energy efficiency programs that we can adapt for those counties and cities, and in fact worked out memorandums of understanding legally capable of being done with each of those jurisdictions in the county, and they're satisfied. The elected officials over there who are responsible for those budgets, for those general fund budgets, are satisfied that they're going to be made whole and will actually come out ahead by having SMUD.
Isn't it really that's their call anyway?
It's their call.
It's their tax. So the people of Yolo County are going to have to rely upon their elected officials if they say we want to bring SMUD over and we're going to be able to afford this from a county standpoint.
Right, they have to hold them accountable.
All right, so that's the county. But let's dig deeper down to the citizen, the customer. What's going to change if SMUD takes over the power in Yolo County?
Well, let's talk about what's going to happen to the Yolo customers. We have structured this measure whereby those customers in Yolo will be tied to PG&E rates for a period of time. Right now, the average customer is $100 plus. Let's call it $100 for sake of discussion in YOLO. The average SMUD customer is a little over $70. Let's call it 70. So it's 100 versus 70. On the day we start serving, the YOLO customers will start paying $98 or 2% under the PG&E rates. And however PG&E rates move, their rates will move with that. Now, the difference between the 98 and the 70, which is kind of where the SMUD rates are right now, that $28 will go to retiring the cost of the wires and the poles and the transformers, which we have to buy if we decide to provide service to YOLO.
All right. Ken Payne?
Well, we really see the YOLO side as creating another SMUD, so to speak. The YOLO people will be paying essentially a 28% surcharge for the SMUD service in order to pay for the infrastructure that they'll have to purchase from PG&E.
Yeah, but Bill said they'll pay 2% less than they're paying right now.
Well,
but I don't. I'm looking at I don't really care who's paying what for whom. What's my bill?
Well, 2% is 2%, but remember, 2% is only $2 on 100. It's not a big savings, but they're looking at paying 2% for 10 or 15 years to pay off the property. Part of our objection here is that we don't know what the cost of the PG&E acquisition is going to be. That'll be decided in an eminent domain trial by a jury,
and that's a big deal too. And so when we come back, I want to tackle that about this. The numbers, folks. I'll let these guys explain it, but I've seen numbers that aren't even in the same, not only ballpark, they're not even in the same continent. So they're widely different. So we'll tackle these guys on the cost of this and who's going to pay for that. Plus, we'll get over to the river, across the river, and we'll find out what about the current SMUD customers. What does it mean to them? We'll come back. We're talking about the SMUD annexation of Yolo County. And a lot of you in Sacramento and Yolo will be voting on that next Tuesday. We'll be back. Tom Sullivan on KFBK.
Your station for Fox News on the radio. Here is first. News Talk 1530 KFBK. KFBK.
It's the Rapid Rooter guy on location at a real plumbing emergency to see exactly how fast Rapid Rooter really is. Hey there, what's the problem today?
Yeah, it's a big sewer backup with grease in the pipes, roots in the sewer, and somebody's got a doll stuck in the toilet.
Well, that's going to take some time.
Okay, all done.
Wow.
Hey, I gotta go now. There's a sewer situation in Citrus Heights, a kitchen clog in Carmichael, trouble with tree roots in Rockland, and a basement flood in Folsom.
Yep, there you have it. Proof that nobody's faster than Rapid Rooter.
But you might want to switch to a decaf.
When more than traffic backs up, call Rapid Rooter at 1-800-IT-FLOWS. That's 1-800-IT-FLOWS.
Hi, this is Kevin Martin. Recently, I met with Mike Lim, owner of New York Diamonds. Let me tell you, I was very impressed with the store. Their sales personnel takes the time to educate their customers on buying diamonds and learning the 4 C's. All loose diamonds are sold at or below New York wholesale prices or your money back guaranteed. Their newest Diamante designer wedding sets are available now. Over 250-plus styles exclusively designed for New York Diamonds. Here's Mike Lim.
You will save money when you shop New York Diamonds, and that's my promise to you. Come see us at 5450 Sunrise Boulevard in Citrus Heights.
This? Milk. Low fat, no fat. Their milk too, and their names rhyme.
This man may sound odd.
Low fat, no fat.
But to his 3-year-old daughter helping him pick out food, he makes perfect sense.
Here's cheese with holes in it.
Learning starts long before school does, and children are naturally curious. Take simple moments like shopping and turn them into learning moments.
It's called Swiss.
Swiss has holes.
That's right. Can you say gorgonzola?
Gorgonzola.
Turn everyday moments into learning moments. Visit bornlearning.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Imagine being 19, a veteran, and paralyzed. Meet James Crosby, recently back from Iraq.
We were riding in the 7-ton truck when we came under rocket attack. I was hit in the back by flying shrapnel, injuring my spinal cord. When I woke up in the States, they told me I was paralyzed. Thank goodness an officer from Paralyzed Veterans of America was there. TVA helped me fill out dozens of forms and managed everything to make sure I received all my medical and rehab benefits. They knew what to do and how to do it so I could concentrate on getting well enough to go home. So I say thanks, TVA. I could not have done it without you.
Serving America's veterans for over 60 years, Paralyzed Veterans of America. To help create a better
Depend on great talk radio from Tom Sullivan on your news, weather, and traffic station. News Talk 1530 KFBK.
222, Tom Sullivan in your radio. We're talking about SMUD annexation of Yolo County, and I'll tell you, I've got 2 guys that are here. Bill Slaton is here. He's a board member of SMUD and director of the chair of the campaign committee to get you to vote yes on Measure L in Sacramento and H and I in Yolo County. And then Ken Payne is here from the Sacramento County Taxpayers League who wants you to vote no on the whole kit and caboodle. I went to your website, Bill Slaton, at SMUD, and there it is, Yolo Electric Service Request, and it's got a little proposal summary and the SMUD customers, a little box there that explains what Measure L is for Yolo County customers, what Measure H and I is. Then I went over to PG&E, and they had 2 boxes on it, too, about Yolo customers, click here, Sacramento customers, SMUD customers, click here. Clicked on them, they said, sorry, it's unavailable. So I didn't get anything from their website. And so then I hunted around trying to find, all right, is there something that we can look at? And what I found, and I'm going to put this on my webpage, folks, it's smartvoter.org. And Smart Voter, which is run by the League of Women Voters of California, their education fund, has arguments for, arguments against, rebuttals, the whole thing for you to go through and read about all of this. But one of the issues which we brought up just before, and we're going to take your calls right after the bottom of the hour, and you can ask these 2 gentlemen your questions about this SMUD annexation. It goes back again, and Bill Slaton, maybe you can fill in the history here, but SMUD last annexed something was the city of Folsom?
Yeah, it was actually the Folsom area. It was a little beyond the city limits, but essentially Folsom.
And that was how long ago?
That was in the early 80s.
Early 80s? All right. And so there was that was, I guess, the last thing you could look at and say, well, this is what happened when they did it last time. But the numbers, and I don't have them in front of me, but I've seen numbers that are like $70 million is what it's going to cost to do this, and another one is $500 million it's going to cost. Can we divide by two?
No. You can't divide by two.
All right.
You can't divide by two.
All right. Bill Slaton, yes on these measures. What's the number?
Well, Tom, let's go back to the Folsom example that you started with. SMUD, about a month before the election for Folsom in 1982, said that the system would be worth approximately $16 million. That was a month before the election. And meanwhile, PG&E said it was worth $40 million. We settled on the courthouse steps for $13 million plus $3 million in interest for a total of $16 million. The Folsom transaction, which PG&E doesn't want to talk about, the fact is we can go back in history now and compare what has been saved by this community, and it's $380 million that has stayed here in lower rates since we asked Folsom to join.
And Ken, forgive me if I'm taking words out of your mouth, but I think everybody's pretty happy with what SMUD has done for the Sacramento customer.
That's true. Yeah.
The question is not only what is the cost of this, but who's going to pay for the cost of it this time, because everything is a bigger number now than that.
Good question. And what we did is we studied this with the YOLO communities, and we came in between $86 and $130 million after we analyzed it. And remember, we have people at SMUD as well as the outside consultants. We've been doing this for 60 years. It's not like we're amateurs at the energy business. We build new systems. We're growing by 2.5% every year. So we analyzed and came in up with that range. But then LASCO, who's the agency responsible for doing the independent analysis as to whether this makes good economic sense and good service sense for the region. They hired consultants that did not work for PG&E, did not work for SMUD. They came in at $110 million. And you know what validates that? Is we've estimated we could build the whole system brand new for $250 million, and that's a new system. Now, PG&E can't, in any proceeding, they're not going to get reimbursed for a new system. They're going to get reimbursed for the system less depreciation, as Ken said.
Whatever fair market value is, but that's kind of hard because there's not a lot of people out buying utility systems.
Well, that's why it's not fair market value. It really is replacement cost less depreciation. That really is the highest standard that's used in utility valuation. Okay. And let me just add one other point, Tom, because your listeners know that you're a financial person and you follow the markets. We're subject to rating agency review all the time, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch. And because we're capital intensive, we build a lot of facilities, we do a lot of bond issues.
Right.
None of the rating agencies, who are all aware of this measure, have raised any issues with us regarding it, have voiced any concerns about whether SMUD is embarking on something that would not be beneficial to the district.
All right. Ken Payne.
You want to hear my side?
That's where I'm going.
Okay, good deal. I looked at a report from one of the major eminent domain attorney firms here in Los Angeles, and from the cases that have been settled, the average settlement is about 70% between the two numbers. Now, the high and the low that comes into the eminent domain case will be based on appraisals that both sides bring in, but then a jury will decide on the ultimate value. But of the ones that have been decided, according to the report that I looked at, it's about 70% of the difference, but that's added to...
But in eminent domain, most of those cases, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, but aren't you talking about the government wants to build a bridge right over my house, so they take my property, in which a house is a lot easier to estimate value. They give me one price, I say it's worth another price, and you're saying the eminent domain comes in 70% of all of that. I'm not quite sure what to think, because Bill, you said, well, wait a minute, it's replacement. Yeah, but I'm going, but wait a minute, you're taking somebody's property, so it's got to be more than that.
Well, let's talk about that property, because PG&E does own the wires, the poles, the transformers.
Right.
They don't own the right to provide electric service. That is reserved for the citizens under the California Constitution. The citizens get to decide on who their electric provider is going to be.
Right.
And they have been paying for that system. That's why I said replacement less depreciation is the highest ranking, because that subtracts out what the customer's been paying.
You're saying is the customer's assets, it's their assets, they've paid for it. So you shouldn't have to pay any more.
We should pay a fair price which the low range is the original cost less depreciation.
Okay.
This Ken is referring to the 70% number. He's talking between original cost less depreciation and replacement cost less depreciation, which is the higher number. And I'm referring that the higher number, we can build it without any depreciation for $250.
All right. So what's your number? What is the number you think it's going to cost, Ken Payne?
Well, about probably around closer to $400 million, maybe $380 million. But
how can you two guys be so far off?
Well,
basically,
I would suggest
nobody knows.
Well, I would suggest this. If I'm PG&E and I don't want this to happen, I want to pick a high enough number. I don't care whether it has air in it, whether it's real or unreal. I'm going to say enough times a high enough number that halfway between my number and the number that SMUD is saying would make the deal maybe not so good.
All right. So we're not going to agree on a number. So let's move on to the last point I want to get to.
Tom, let me say one thing about the fundamental principle here, though, I think that the league really has a bone to pick about, is the fact that it's just an abuse of the eminent domain power for one utility to take over another to provide electricity. PG&E's already used eminent domain to take over rights of way to provide service in Yolo County.
Right.
To us, it's ludicrous for another utility to come along and take over another utility just to provide the electric service that's already being provided.
Bill Slaton.
This is not even eminent domain. Think about it. This is the citizens deciding on who they want to do business with. If you're a customer and you go to a grocery store, that's the issue.
All right. So
voters are going to decide.
I'm trying to wrap that around my head here a little bit, because what you're saying. See, I look at it and my first glance is, well, no, PG&E owns the telephone pole or the power pole. And I get to decide who I want to have my power brought in here with, but they paid to put that power. They bought the pole.
Correct.
They paid some people to put it up.
Absolutely.
And they maintain it. So isn't it an asset of another organization?
It is their asset, but the right to provide electricity is reserved by the citizens. So once the citizens decide, if they decide they want SMUD rather than PG&E, which is their right under the Constitution, then we have to pay them what is a fair price for those assets.
Well, I see what you're saying. You're saying the citizens can say, I'm switching customers.
Exactly.
I'm switching my utility.
Exactly.
And so, sorry, PG&E, thank you for building all this, and we'll pay you for it.
And we'll pay you for it, and we'll pay you at most the cost to replace it, less what we've already been paying in.
I've got to take a break. Bottom of the hour news is coming right up. When we come back, there's another whole issue here, and that is, what is SMUD's capacity or ability to be able to provide the power? Because that's a big new chunk of territory. It's 2:31 on KFBK.
The Tom Sullivan Show on News Talk 1530 KFBK.
It's open enrollment time for health insurance, and if you're scratching your head about what to do, here's what I suggest. Take a good look at Western Health Advantage. They invite you to really scrutinize their providers, their service, and their premiums. Look hard. Once you do, I think you'll see real value. Western Health Advantage is local, created by local healthcare providers, and that avoids the bureaucratic hassles common to big HMOs. For instance, you're not locked into one medical group. If you need to see a specialist, you can be referred to just about anyone in the entire Western Health Advantage network. Western Health Advantage is nonprofit, which keeps the costs down without sacrificing quality or service. And Western Health Advantage is accessible. When you call them, you get a real, live, helpful person fast, typically within 30 seconds. You'll find Western Health Advantage providers throughout the counties of Sacramento, Yolo, Solano, Western El Dorado, and Western Placer. Call Western Health Advantage and ask them the hard questions. I think you'll like the answers. Find out more by visiting westernhealth.com.
The top news, weather, and traffic on the hour, on the app, and when news breaks, hear it first. It's coverage you can count on from News Talk 1530 KFBK.
Fox News Radio, I'm Jane Metzler. It came late but was the right thing to do. White House reaction to this afternoon's apology by Massachusetts Senator John Kerry for what he described as a botched joke, that students who don't do well in school wind up stuck in Iraq. Kerry claiming his words were misinterpreted, apologizing to any service member, family member, or American who was offended. The 2004 Democratic presidential candidate's campaign help no longer needed or wanted.
All Kerry campaign appearances are now off, with the feeling that a Kerry visit now might just sink a campaign.
Fox Radio's Mike Makowitz. A possible break in the California wildfire arson probe.
Authorities say they've arrested Raymond Lee Euler for arson fires set in June and are calling him a person of interest in the deadly Esperanza fire as well.
Fox Radio's Jessica Rosenthal. 5 firefighters died battling the wildfire. Fox News, we report, you decide. It's 2:34 now at KFBK. I'm Kitty O'Neill. Former President Clinton will stub for Democratic congressional candidate Jerry McNeary tonight in the sign of another tougher-than-usual campaign in the 11th district this year. Clinton will join McNerney at a get-out-the-vote rally in Stockton. First Lady Laura Bush will visit Stockton tomorrow to campaign for the incumbent, Republican Richard Pombo. Nearly 200 employees of eBay's PayPal division in San Jose are staying home today after an explosion last night in the building. Officials say the blast shattered a large window in the 4-story structure, and there were no injuries. 2:35. Let's check the 24-hour traffic watch brought to you by ATM Mortgage in the Syntex Homes Traffic Center at KFBK's Rick Stewart.
Westbound I-80 just west of Norwood, we have a single-car incident in which a car spun into the center divide barrier. No injuries involved. Northrift Avenue and Howe Avenue have a 2-vehicle non-injury collision. Well, somebody has some explaining to do. Fair Oaks Boulevard at Morse Avenue have a 3-vehicle incident in which there were no injuries. Car apparently hit an SUV in an intersection, then backed into a parking lot, hitting another vehicle, and while moving away from that one, backed into a building. Yeah, there are officers on scene. 42nd Street at Roosevelt Avenue, a car versus pedestrian incident. We have an ambulance on the scene just in case, and a lane is blocked. On the 24-hour traffic watch, Rick Stewart, News Talk 1530, KFBK.
Before I started having seizures, I went to jail. Before I went to jail, I lost my kids. Before I lost my kids, I stole money from my family. Before I stole money from my family, I scrubbed all the floors with a toothbrush. Before I scrubbed all the floors with a toothbrush, I felt amazing. Before I felt amazing, I tried meth. End meth at drugfree.org/Charlotte.
A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and California.
You'll find a lot of companies who say they can help you create a financial plan, and you'll find even more who want to sell you mutual funds. But wouldn't it make sense to talk to someone with a proven track record of doing both? Like your local financial advisor at Waddell & Reed. Waddell & Reed has been providing sound advice and solid investment products for over 60 years. Waddell & Reed, investing with a plan.
Here in the Sacramento area, call Leslie Roper Day, CFP, to help you focus on your finances. Call Leslie at 1-877-2-LESLIE.
Let's check your KFBK forecast. Channel 3's Weather Plus forecaster, Julie Watt.
We are looking at a pretty gray day today. Damp out there, temperatures pretty cool as well. We're in the mid-60s tomorrow, cooler still in the low 60s. A few folks seeing a few sprinkles today. Overall, the bigger rain event will be tomorrow. And again, not a big storm. We're just going to see showers off and on throughout the day for your Thursday. Gray skies continuing. And then we will see those gray skies continue on through the first half of the weekend with a chance of showers here and there. By Sunday, we start to dry out and see a little bit more sun. And that's your KFBK forecast, and I'm Julie Watson, the KCRA 3 Weather Plus Weather Center.
Thanks, Julie. 65 in Marysville, Modesto, 69 and 68 at our studios in Sacramento. I'm Kitty O'Neill on News Talk 1530 KFBK.
You must be your fairy godmother.
Yes. It doesn't take a fairy godmother to tell you that the right fit means everything.
Good heavens, child. You can't go in that.
Children under 4'9" need to be in a booster seat because they aren't ready for adult safety belts alone. Remember that 4'9" is the magic number. And get your little pumpkin there safely in a booster seat.
Oh, thank you.
For more information, visit boosterseat.gov. This has been a message from the U.S. Department of Transportation and the Ad Council.
Quick, what do these sounds have in common? These are the sounds of geography. Geography helps us understand connections between people and places. But our kids aren't getting enough of it. Half can't locate Japan or India, and 20% can't even find the Pacific Ocean. So we created MyWonderfulWorld.org to give kids the power of global knowledge. Go to MyWonderfulWorld.org to learn more. It's a wonderful world.
Hi, Farmer Fred here for Provco, the professional tree and landscape company. Fall is the best time for a landscape makeover. The air temperature is cool, but the soil is still warm. These are ideal conditions for roots of new plants to take hold. So now's the time to call Provco. They'll remove your unwanted trees and shrubs and plant better ones. Plus, they can beautify an ugly lawn. So get your yard looking great right now. Call 800-339-4095 for Provco or visit ProTreeAndLandscape.com. Provco.
By Gazetta and Company, Sacramento's favorite jeweler. Bruce Maven talks to 97, following the KFBK Afternoon News with Kitty O'Neill and Jay Allen. Now back to Tom Sullivan on News Talk 1530 KFBK.
2:39, 21 before the top of the hour. Tom Sullivan in your radio, and we've got the people on the SMUD annexation of Yolo County. Bill Slaton is here to ask you to vote yes on these measures. Sacramento, you get 1 to vote on. Yolo, you get 2 to vote on. And Bill Slaton's a board member of SMUD. And Ken Payne is here to ask you to vote no on these measures, president of the Sacramento County Taxpayers League. I was looking through this smartvoter.org, the impartial analysis from Sacramento County Council. And then I see the arguments for, arguments against, and so forth. And one of the questions, so we're if you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen, we're finding out some of the nuts and bolts here of this particular transaction. But the argument against this is that SMUD doesn't generate enough power to serve existing customers during some peak periods. And so the question, and I thought, Bill Slaton, that SMUD, back in the energy crisis we had in California 5 or 6 years ago, that you were part of the grid, but I remember talking to some SMUD officials who said, oh, no, we're going to get off this thing. The next time around, you guys are on your own system. You're not part of the, you've got enough to generate, but is the argument against it that you don't have enough in a storm, and if so, where do you get it, and what do you have to pay for it?
Well, first of all, we have plenty of energy, and during the energy crisis, we fared well. But as a result of that crisis, we realized that we didn't want to have to take a rolling blackout due to a credit problem by another utility, which is the problem PG&E had.
Right.
So we formed our own control area so we can control our destiny.
Are you plugged into the grid?
Oh, of course,
okay.
Of course. And if there's a system problem statewide, we're going to participate like everybody else is. But the fact is, we have enough energy. We just brought a 500 megawatt Cosumnes power plant on, and actually adding the Yolo customers helps us be more efficient as a utility. It gives us more load to use for our existing plants. No good utility, PG&E is the same way. Nobody has enough generating capacity to run at their peak. And the reason is because those expensive assets would sit idle most of the year, and that's not a good use of financial resources.
All right, but when you add, that's pretty good sized territory over there.
Correct.
I don't think it's the population. Obviously, you've got some population centers like Davis and Woodland and West Sacramento. Other than that, there's a lot of agricultural land out there. I don't know, do they use as much power?
Actually, a lot of land underwater in the causeway.
Oh, true.
All of that's included.
So it's how much? I mean,
but it's a zero-sum game. Think about it. PG&E is serving those customers today. They're using their generating capacity, and during peak, they're buying power on the market just like SMUD does. That's an efficient way to run a utility. Well, if they're not providing the energy to YOLO, it's available for us to be able to buy or to generate. So there's enough energy to go around. It doesn't change how much energy is available just because they change who their energy suppliers.
But one of the things, though, that you have done as SMUD is you've kept your rates low because you've got a lot of your old power supply sources that others don't have. But is it able to handle all these new people?
Oh, yeah. We're going to be able to handle it. First of all, we're going to buy on the market long gas, which, by the way, is about the same price as it was at the time we did the studies. And we're going to replicate PG&E's portfolio during the period of time that we're retiring all this debt. And once that debt is retired, those YOLO customers become just like SMUD customers. They end up on SMUD rates. And, we're 30% below PG&E right now. We have been, over the last 20 years, consistently below PG&E rates. There was a little period during the energy crisis where we got kind of close, but during all the rest of the time, we've been significantly lower, and we think we can continue operating. And in fact, having these YOLO customers makes SMUD a more efficient utility. It gives us more customers over which to spread our fixed costs.
All right. Ken Payne, President of Sacramento County Taxpayers League, you got the opposite view, I presume. What's your take on their ability to provide the power?
Actually, that wasn't part of our arguments. I'm not the electricity expert here. Speaking from the Sacramento County Taxpayers League's point of view, we're happy with SMUD's service. They've got low rates and good service, and we just want to keep it that way. And the risks involved in this takeover game is It's not really unknown, the price of the land over there, the acquisition cost.
Yeah, but the price, see, I'm sitting there scratching my head about what you just said, because I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I mean, if they have to go buy some more power, then that's not going to be at those good old little rates. If they're not able to provide it themselves, they got to go out and get more expensive power. Is what I'm not an energy expert, but that's got to be a concern for people that are that are looking at it from a financial standpoint.
Sure. Yeah, the price of energy could go up, and honestly, the SMUD's operating costs aren't necessarily going to stay fixed. I just heard this morning something that is not news yet, but I heard that that SMUD was having a problem with unfunded pension liabilities, and that may cause rates to go up in the SMUD district. Now, that's not news yet, but I heard that from a good source this morning. And but there's variables. There's variables in this world. And
I don't believe anything I hear a week before an election. I don't. I mean, there's just too much garbage being thrown around. You know, if you're going to come to the microphone, you got to come with facts.
Well, you know? the reality is, Tom, we have a Columbus power plant that 9 months a year we have surplus power. So that surplus power is either going to be sold in the marketplace wholesale, or it can be sold retail to the YOLO customers. That's part of the advantage the existing SMUD system gets by bringing those additional customers over, bringing our neighbors over. You know, they ask us for help. We're not for profit. This is a way to bring them over and have a stronger utility. That's the reason why we voted for this in the first place.
Where's SMUD going? Is this kind of a one step out of you want to be a regional utility?
Well, let's go back to where SMUD was. SMUD was established, by the way, the year after KFBK was established. In 1923, SMUD was established. It took us till 1946 to wrestle the system away from PG&E. In the 30s, it was first the city of Sacramento, and then in the 30s, the county asked to be part of it, and then, of course, in the 80s, we did Folsom. So we've been making changes, prudently done, carefully thought out, over a period of generations. And this one just makes sense. When you think about it, the Sacramento River is really not a boundary anymore today. It's certainly not an economic boundary. So taking hold of our energy future in YOLO and Sacramento in this region, so we do energy planning just like we do land use planning, certainly flood protection, all of these things fit together.
All right. We're talking about the annexation of YOLO County by SMUD. Bill Slaton from SMUD is here, and Ken Payne from the Sacramento County Taxpayers League. If you have a question, the phone number to join the program, 921-1530, or on your cell phone, star or pound 1530. Tom in your truck. Hello, Tom. You're on KFBK.
Hey, Tom. Maybe they can straighten me out if I'm wrong on something. Does SMUD pay corporate taxes? The PG&E does pay corporate taxes, doesn't it? And if not, would these fellows be willing to see the playing field get leveled?
All right, so brings up the tax question again. Since you're a not-for-profit...
Not-for-profit, so we do not pay either taxes or we don't pay franchise fees. But what
You're a government entity, aren't you?
We are, in effect, a government entity. We're a not-for-profit, publicly owned utility. We're established under the MUD Act of 1921.
Okay.
And what happens is, because those taxes are not paid, and by the way, that means also dividends, stock dividends are not paid to investors.
Right.
And all of that is rolled back into keeping our rates low and our service level.
Well,
that's why J.D. Powers ranks us number one.
I don't think I'll pick up where Tom did not ask. He may have been going there, but is the difference between your rates and others the tax?
I don't think so.
It sounds like it's about the same number.
No, but if you listen, PG&E has a guaranteed rate of return to the investors coming out of bankruptcy of 11.32%. Now, you gross that up for federal income tax and state income tax,
right.
You're into 17-18%. There's part of it right there. That's a huge chunk of it because those dividends need to be paid to the investors. In our case, our owners are the investors.
All right. Ken Payne?
Well, we're back to it's fundamentally wrong for a public utility to take over a private one.
But if the citizens asked them to. One of the things about the Keel decision that drove a lot of people up the wall was a public entity taking over a private property to give to another private property. This would be going to they're a public agency, so it'd be public. It goes under the finest establishments of eminent domain.
If the voters decide.
I mean, if the voters say, come and take over our utility, isn't that basic, good old-fashioned government entity, eminent domain?
Well, it's my impression that the mechanism for that is still going to be an eminent domain trial.
Yeah, but eminent domain, what's wrong? We've been doing eminent domain for years.
That's true.
You build schools, and you build freeways, and you build parks.
PG&E uses it all the time, and so does SMUD in terms of building their infrastructure.
Right.
It's a common use.
SMUD and PG&E do use it all the time, and I may have alluded to that earlier, but to use it again for the same thing is really back to the Yolo County side having to pay for the infrastructure all over again for a second time.
Let's get some more calls in. Mike in your truck. Hello, Mike. You're on KFBK.
How are you guys doing this afternoon?
Doing great.
My question is, why is Sacramento County and Foster County, why are we voting for an issue which is primarily for Yolo County citizens? I mean, I elect SMUD board members to represent my views for SMUD.
Well, I might get in the middle of that one because I'll tell you something. In fact, I had a lot of SMUD people that were mad at me, but when this whole thing came along, I said, well, wait a minute. If I'm a stockholder, I know Bill will not like my answer, but here's my answer to you, Mike. If I'm a stockholder in XYZ Corporation and you want to buy out another company, you got to get stockholder approval. And I look at it as this is rate holder approval, and I thought it was the right thing to do was to go to the voters, to the ratepayers of SMUD and say, is it all right with you if we go buy this big park?
And you know, Tom, I don't have a problem with what you just said. And in fact, the SMUD board initially thought that we would take our responsibility as directors and we would make this business decision because we're really not buying a whole business. We're buying part of a territory is what we're doing. But then what happened is we had people come to us, including Ken Payne and the Taxpayers League.
I'm over here bellowing.
Yeah, and said, you know, the voters ought to have a chance to decide, the owners of SMUD, and you know what? We changed our mind. And we decided to put it on the ballot. And that's part of the great value of having a utility that is customer-owned.
All right, let's go back then because I'll follow up where Mike, I think, was going to then. You've got these two measures in Yolo County. Both of those have to pass for you to do the deal. What if Sacramento's, do all three of them have to pass?
All three have to pass. All three have to pass. So the owners of SMUD have to say yes. And our neighbors in Yolo who ask us for help, they've got to say yes as well.
Got to, because you said they came to you and asked, but this way they're really coming to you.
This is a formal decision.
All right. Mm-hmm. Let's get Chuck in here from Sacramento. Chuck, hello. You're on KFBK.
Yeah, I'd like to... Bob, the farmer out there in Yolo County, he isn't going to benefit by this because it's only for the people in the city of West Sacramento, Davis, and Woodland.
What about Bob, the farmer outside of the city limits?
Well, you know, when the initial request was made and we started analyzing it and studying it, we had to look at it from two perspectives. We had to look at what made financial sense in terms of breadth of coverage. We wanted to stay within 30 miles of our central facility so that we wouldn't be driving out too far and we could maintain our service standards. The other thing we had to watch out for and be careful of is the infrastructure hookups. We had to make sure that when we disconnected those customers from PG&E, we were not creating stranded customers where PG&E would have to build additional facilities to serve those customers. So under those two conditions, we had to draw the map some way, and this is the way it came out.
Did you draw it along city boundary?
No, it actually doesn't.
Was it some rectangle, or was it some weird thing?
It's actually a shape that follows along the transmission lines and where the transmission will go. That's really much of the driver, but also staying within that 30-mile radius.
All right. Ken Payne?
Well,
what about Bob the farmer? Should he be part of this?
Well, that was one of our concerns, was that Bob the farmer might receive a lower level of service because the focus, in a sense, all the low-hanging fruit was picked by SMUD on the Yolo County side. The rest of it's very rural. In fact, this proposed acquisition is about more than a 20% increase in territory, but only about a 12% increase in customers. So you've got a lot more space over there than you do people, actually.
But on the farmer issue also is that one of the decisions that had to be made by LAFCO is they had to get a ruling from the Public Utilities Commission whether the remaining customers, including the farmer, would be harmed or set aside or have a problem as a result of this. And in fact, the PUC unanimous ruling came back no. Those customers can still be served adequately and at fair price by PG&E.
All right. Gentlemen, we're up against the clock. Thank you both. Bill Slaton, from board member over at SMUD, and Ken Payne, president of Sacramento County Taxpayers League. Thank you, guys.
Welcome.
Thank you. 54 on KFBK.